creation of God, perfect, eternal extension of God. I am that is the journey, the exploration, the acceptance of the perfection of your eternal self, and the rejection of all beliefs of not only limitation, but the small self that runs in the world in fear and has at its intention trying to get. That identity holds the fear of the world and has no resemblance at all to the exquisite perfection as the extension of God that exists as your divine self. In the world, to refer to yourself as the divine self seems odd, seems out of place to the world. But there is nothing out of place of accepting that your divine self is a reflection of God. Always has been, always will be. It has never been touched by the illusion. It has never been touched by the parts of the illusion that have been believed cause damage, abandonment, rejection, difficulty. All of those elements disappear as you accept the divinity within. So in accepting this exquisite reality, you accept with one hand and you reject the little self. The little self. So easily believed in, so easily given obedience, and yet takes you nowhere. And in every way, the divine is calling to every beloved through the heart, through the mind, to follow. Just follow. Follow the source of your being. Imagine rejecting what created you as itself, because that's what the little self has at its center. Everyone has been in the confusion of, in one hand, preserving the self through what the self seems to know, and that the self is a self-promoter out of fear. everything comes back to, how does this affect me? That is the ego's intention. But love is calling for the expansion of oneness into its reality. And in that reality, there is no me that has to self-preserve. There is no person that is self-preserved. But the world of love has nothing to fear, because in the world of love there is no death. In the world of love there is no heartache. In the world of love there is no loss. There is no battle. Only love exists as the source of God. And there is no agenda in the truth of love. There's nothing to get, nothing to prove, nothing to win. And so that little me begins to evaporate, because it only works in fear. And as each beloved begins to surrender the belief in fear, the I am begins to be recognized and honored. Don't be afraid of the divinity that you are, that is so beyond any small me that has been developed. Love demands nothing. Nothing. This is a world of demands. This is a world of demands that has been developed completely out of fear. And demands. Demands have been the center of the ego's plan, because when you believe that something is demanded of you, it generates fear, and it generates confusion, it generates resentment, it generates resentment and betrayal, because something is being demanded that has not a possibility of being love. So as each beloved comes to a deeper truth, it is essential to no longer demand anything within the mind, but also not to allow anything on the outside to demand your loyalty, your presence, your explanations, your right and wrong, good and bad. It means nothing. Love has no opposites. Love has no opposites, and absolutely everything is love. So there is truly no other at all. one heart, one breath, all focused on the divine and the one will, the will of God. In the world, there is a game that is played that has to do with demands, that if things are demanded of you, then by rights, you have the right to demand of others. And the game goes on. And it's mulled over in the mind to see if it's equal, to see if it's good for one, good for getting back, having to make things even. But the love truly is calling every beloved to step away from engaging in any mind ideas of demands. How can we demand when it is not possible to know what anyone else's journey should look like? Moment to moment, we don't know. We don't know their journey in this lifetime, but we don't know from moment to moment what is most helpful for anyone. We, as separate identity, as the little self, cannot know anything about someone else's journey. And we actually know so little about our own because it is in the divine orchestration of God. And so we surrender the belief in demands. Imagine the day-to-day life where you are no longer believing in demands, so that there is no pressure, there is no drive in the sense of fear, there is no obligation, there is no rule that is being followed somehow, that has been made up. But you come back to the laws of God, the laws of love, and you let God lead, because God is the source of your existence. How could anything else lead, truly, except the source of your existence? And as these old agreements are let go, you begin to connect in a new way, a deeper way, with your divine will, that is God's will. And you follow that will rather than believing any longer in the demands that the world produces. God is the divine authority that creates everything. The ego only makes illusion, nothing to hang on to, nothing to have in truth, nothing real. I will follow. Those can be words that, and an intention that can transform your life in such a whole way. And it's so simple. I will follow. The little self begins to fade. No longer listened to, no longer held as the authority, only love. But even though you're not listening anymore to that little self, that little voice of fear and habit, your listening actually increases because you have to listen a little bit more deeply, because the voice isn't as recognized. And because the divine speaks so softly, it speaks in quiet. It doesn't have a demand, and it doesn't coerce through guilt or shame or responsibilities or shoulds of any kind. It becomes the exquisite relationship of honor and trust. Trusting the divine, trusting the source of our existence. In this moment, affirming that only love exists and that all of the bits and pieces of the little self are beginning to fade away. As each beloved affirms that this sanctuary is filled with love, this universe is all love, there is nothing to battle with. And the acceptance of the life force of God, that it is truly the life force of your existence, your spirit, the divine spirit of love, forever, forever, forever lives through the power of God. One heart in devotion. This hymn speaks to the devotion of finding the way home and embracing all the divine beings that serve that remembering and that journey. Asking the Divine Mother to radiate the truth of love. Mother, I beg for your love. I beg you for your compassion. I beg you for your light. I beg you for the forgiveness. Help me in this darkness. Help me find your sun. Reveal the way to my life. Reveal the way to my Father. I'm a daughter of the Queen. I'm a daughter of compassion. Help me be in the light. Help me open my heart. I beg for your love. The begging is here. The begging is not demanded. The begging pierces the heart and allows you to feel how deeply you are longing for that connection and that help. It's heard immediately. It's answered immediately. I'm a daughter of the Queen. I'm a daughter of compassion. This is your divine self. It's not whether it's male or female. It's the divine self that is willing to stand and rest with the divine truth of God and to truly live with the Divine Mother, always there. In the infinity of space, there's a brilliance and a presence of God in every molecule, and all divine beings that serve the truth of love are holding that infinite space. All the callings to all divine beings, the brilliance of the light, it's resplendent, and it remembers that we are never alone, we are never without. No infinito do espaço, onde brilha a presença de Deus e dos seres divinos que habitam todos os mundos céus, verde, azul e branco, e de Agubimai rainha, no resplendor destas matas, Jesus Cristo, bom mestre, ensina. No resplendor destas matas, Jesus Cristo, bom mestre, ensina. The infinity of space is your home. Everything is yours. There is no limit to what is oneness. Infinity. Now is the time. Now is the time to know that all that you are is sacred. Now, why not consider a lasting truth with yourself and God? Now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels to be laid aside when you finally live with veracity and love. The teacher is a divine envoy whom the beloved has written a holy message upon. My dear, please tell me, why do you still throw sticks at your heart and at God? What is in that convincing voice inside that incites you to fear? Now is the time for the world to know that every moment and every inspiration is sacred. This is the time for you to deeply compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Now is the season to accept that everything you touch is sacred. How can it be otherwise? That everything that you touch is sacred when you are the sacred expression of God. It's not possible for you not to bless in your alignment with love. You're here to bless. You're here to recognize that everything you touch is sacred. It's not an overstatement. It's actually that there aren't enough words to really express how sacred the truth of you is. How blessed the world is that you are remembering. All the longing that occurs within the ego journey, all of it's all the remembering of that you are so perfect, that you are actually a reflection of the power of the universe. None of us can understand that. It's not meant to really be understood, but it is meant to be accepted and lived. Everything that is being let go is completely fabricated. So there's no reason for, as you let go of old beliefs, that there would be any remorse or any sense of loss, because everything that you are surrendering and letting go of never really existed. Imagine that you would come back, that you would put all of your identity into a room, all your photographs, all everything that you believe is a reflection of you, and you'd put it all in a room, and you'd step away from it, and then you would come back and go into that room, and you wouldn't recognize anything there. Because while you were gone and you left everything that you had made, it disappeared. Because it doesn't really exist. And while you were out, you were with God. And while everything was in that room, you realized, I'm over here in joy, and what was it that I had in that room that I thought was me? And it disappears. But you can't even remember what it was, because it never really existed and it never really meant anything. Only love. So there is a major identity that certainly could be left in the closet of your room, which is the belief that narcissism is somehow a real element of an identity. The word narcissism is used a lot within the world. And it's usually believed that narcissism is about self-involvement, absorbed, but also that it usually means that someone is in the world. It means that that you have a high regard for your identity. Narcissism is fear. And it hides most of itself. It is a direct refusal of God. Narcissism can't survive with God. Everything about narcissism is, and everybody carries it in the world of the ego because it is all ego-centered, that the body says, by its nature of being in an identity, that the body says, I am separate. This body proves it. This body says, I am a separate entity. I am a separate identification. I am a separate life. And I make the decisions for this life. The narcissism of the ego has no limitation in what it touches. I was speaking about narcissism not too long ago and said, when I would hear about someone being sick or dying, the immediate narcissistic response from this identity in the past was, what does that mean for me? Immediately it went to the me. That was somewhat hidden because it wasn't an acceptable element within the world. That was not wasn't considered to be loving. And it wasn't, of course. There was no love there. It was all fear. The fear said, I can be sad after I see where it's going to affect me personally, because that's my greatest fear. Will I have a loss? Will I have a loss? Will I be without? Will I have my life changed because of an event outside? That is the ego's first line of defense, is that it always comes back to me. everything in the ego is for me. But what happens when you believe that you're separate and you believe that you are the maker of your own decisions and that you have to take care of you in separation, your life becomes more and more frightening because the stakes seem to get higher and higher. The worry about retirement, the worry about this, the worry about that. It's all the narcissism of the ego. And yet, in the journey of love, the reason that it is so imperative to affirm, thy will be done. Mother, I beg for your love. I beg to know your compassion. I beg to live in that compassion and to learn in that compassion. There is no love in the self-identification. There can't be. Because there's nothing there that comes from love. If you are in the journey of remembering love, if you use these awarenesses, these truths, the narcissism starts to die. Thank God. The name of God is my inheritance. What is inheritance? It is what is my life. The name of God is my inheritance. The name of God is your inheritance as one. Narcissism can't survive in the name of God. Because immediately in the name of God, you're being called to recognize that God is your creator, that you exist through that love. You are that love. You are a reflection of love. And because narcissism is all fear, if you recognize that the name of God is your inheritance, that you are in the will of God, you may have fantasized at some time, I certainly did, fantasized about inheritance within the world and wanting somehow to develop a security that would say, I belonged to love within the world. And everyone looks for that, the security of the inheritance within the world. But there's no answer there. It's all in God. I am forever an effect of God. To accept this again is to truly surrender the narcissism. I am forever an effect of God. I can't really do anything that is not an effect of God. Because anything else that I would do is illusion. So it means nothing, it has no truth to it. But all through that, I am still the effect of God. I am forever the effect of God. You are forever the effect of God. God is our cause, the cause of our life. And in that movement toward oneness, to return home to God, is to reject the self, the little self that is identified as separate. Opening the heart, offering love, serving love, listening for direction, listening for correction, is all affirmed in the awareness of I am one with God. There's no other source of my truth. There's no other source of any life except for God. I was created in God's heart and mind. Do you take this ownership? I was created in God's heart and mind. Is that part of your history? Does that replace the illusion to come back to I was created in God's heart and mind, and I remain there? No other identity then is reality. Does it stop the love that is being called for to be offered to every beloved? No. It actually enhances, of course, that when you recognize you are the heart, you're created in the heart and mind of God, you have your heart and your mind to offer, because it is holy. It is sacred. Imagine that you would no longer be competing in any way with anything or anyone to prove your worth. I was created in God's heart and mind immediately says, I have everything. I have everything, but the I that has everything is no longer dominant. It is God's. It is love. It is one. Coming home. I will live my life as the effect of God. Doing God's will. Being God's light. Offering God's love. The narcissist tries to offer its own version of love. It has a personality, it has a persona, it has an image, and through that it expresses what it thinks is love. But to live your life as the effect of God is to offer truth, is to offer blessings, is to offer a sacred touch, because you are sacred. Because what God created is sacred. And every touch, every blessing, every intention is of offering of love that is not personal. The narcissist, everything is personal. Everything. Everything is at the end of the road. How does it affect me? But there is no love there. And you are love. You are the light of God. There is a way of being in the world that is also part of the narcissism, but it is the codependency that is sometimes thought of as love. Why is codependency not love? When it could look like love. It could look like worrying about somebody. It could look like concern for someone, or so much concern that you are drawn to rescue or fix whatever it is. And how is that not love? It is not love because it is still trying to get in that relationship of worry with someone else. It's really that the worry disturbs you. The worry is not really about them. It's about how it affects you down deep through that codependence. And it's fear that's running. I remember a beloved who was asked not to give some money to someone who was recovering from alcohol. But they just could not give it because it hurt them too much not to give it. That's the personal narcissistic upside downness that is not love. The love that was being called by God was to not give the money so that this beloved had a chance to stay sober. But the pain was too much in the beloved who felt they had to give it. But every beloved who realizes that they are the effect of God would ask God, how can I serve this beloved? How can I serve what would be most helpful for this beloved? And it becomes a true love of offering. And there's no worry in it because it's in the hands of God. This beloved was created by God, and you are in oneness saying, I'm returning this beloved into the heart of God. There's so much healing in turning to God. I am one with God. I am safe, serene, and in endless joy. That is the home of God. And you have a room there. You belong in the house of God. You live in the kingdom of God as the inheritance of God. It's sometimes somewhat looked over, the connection with God. It's like God is over here and I'm over here. No. You walk with God wherever you are, not walking as if God is over here and you're over here. There's only the oneness. It's so entwined that there's no place where it stops or starts. And the more that you invite that wisdom, that truth, that light, that love, the more the ego has no room. And it doesn't dominate anymore in habit. The habit of the ego is the familiar. And that habit of the ego is being called to be pushed aside, forgotten. All the old habits, forgotten. But what does it take to forget the old habits, to forgive the old habits? It's a being present and conscious with your choice, that you're actually making a choice for God. At first, it's necessary because it's so foreign. Everybody is used to just the trance of habit, thinking for yourself, coming up with conclusions, figuring things out is actually a favorite pastime. There is an ego satisfaction in figuring things out for yourself. But what always goes with that figuring it out for yourself is always the underlying fear of, I don't know what the outcome's going to be and I'm on my own. I'm doing the best I can. I'm using the past to try to figure it out. I'm looking, I'm weighing, I want the answer to be right based on something that I thought I knew. And all that God is calling is to say, let me lead you so easily. Let me lead you and let me give you what's most helpful. Let me show you the way and let me give you the answers that will make your journey so much easier. And there is a leap of faith there, for sure. There's a leap of faith that every beloved must come to, that accepts that God is your life and that you are the life of God. All gifts are given to you. If your will is not one with God's, His gifts are not received. It's not a punishment. It's not a lesson that's being taught in some way. It's because if your will is not, if you're not recognizing that your will is one with God's and that you are answering that will, the door can't open for all the gifts of God's truth. You won't feel the connection. You won't feel the peace and the serenity of following. It's such a joy to follow. It's so serene to follow because you're guaranteed that the direction that you're being called to walk in is going to be most helpful, absolutely the most helpful for your renewal. There's no doubt. It's not even a question. It's the way of love. Every mind that believes and judges the world as trustworthy and true believes in two creators. If you believe the world is trustworthy and true, you believe in two creations. Now that's surprising maybe, but how could it be otherwise? If you believe that the illusion is trustworthy and you go to the past to find your answers again so that they can be as they have been in the past, you believe that you're making your world as we speak. And you believe that there are two possible creators. Or you believe in one creator, yourself, but never in one God. Now, this is a universal teaching. This is not specific to anyone. It's what the ego does. The ego's intention is, I'm in charge. I run the show. It's my mind, it's my thoughts, it's my past, it's my decisions. But there is always fear. Because when you make decisions for yourself, and everybody has experienced this, when you make decisions for yourself, you're making them based on the past. There's no way that you can make them based on anything else. You have nothing else to resource from except the past. So then everything becomes a repeat of the past. And it's fearful. It's very fearful because it's recognized, it's remembered, and it was what you didn't want to continue to believe or to hold as reality. And God is always waiting, always waiting. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Not in spite of God, not in some other universe, but God is but love, and therefore so am I, because I was born of God. Everything that is true here is of God. It is not mine. It is not personal. It is not an ownership. But that's also where the joy is. That's where the relief is. That's where the happiness is because there's only one with God. And it's the source of all blessings and grace. There is nothing that you would be without. Nothing that is real. But you will never be without. It isn't God's will for you to suffer. It isn't God's will for you to be struggling in any way. It's to come home and realize that God is but love, and therefore so am I. You can't be anything else. But it's a learning. And it's a deep learning because you've spent lifetimes protecting your individuality. I remember realizing that, and this is pretty simple, but I remember realizing that the ego that I had made was so messed up that there was a premise that I should make a better one. I should build a better ego before I could surrender. What was not realized was that the ego that I made that seemed so weak and so fragile and so filled with fear was a strong ego, a determined ego of victim that was just as strong as any ego that looked itself as successful. It was entrenched. I didn't have to make a new ego. I just had to recognize that this one was just as unhelpful as all of them. Made up, fabricated. And that there is one life, and I share it with God. One life, I share it with God. Returning to the source is the healing of the heart. Returning to the source is the only way that healing occurs. Even if you return for 2 minutes, it will change everything. There is a resistance in the world to acknowledging that you are listening to God's direction, that God is the source of your direction in the world. You believe you have to have an answer immediately, or else it won't look normal in the world. Somebody asks you a question, and the tendency is to say, I have an answer for you, right? I need to have an answer, and I have an answer right now. But there is another way that is so helpful, which is when somebody asks a question, or you're looking to see what is most helpful, that you actually are able to say, I'll have to be with this and get back to you. And giving yourself that permission, that at some point you may even say, I have to ask my father. I have to ask my mother for a direction. Not that you would necessarily say that, but that you're saying it in your heart. My mother, my father is leading me. I answer to God and I listen. I ask for strength. I ask for clarity. I ask for compassion. I ask because God is the source of all that. Compassion is here someplace, but if it hasn't been discovered, I ask for it to be discovered. I ask for it to be opened so that I can live in that compassion. In narcissism, there is no possibility of compassion, because compassion says, I'm here to offer the love of God. I'm here to hold the truth for you. That is the true compassion. So there is no compassion in narcissism. There is, with everything, mostly this way, that it's just, what about me? And everything that is heard or within the world is filtered through, how does it affect me? And where is my story that matches with whatever I'm hearing? But you can open your heart and be that compassion. And you can hear the call for love, because you are the effect of God. You have the capacity to hear through God's love how to serve someone. You can hear that because it is your natural state. Love cannot judge. As it is one itself, it looks on all as one. Its meaning lies in its oneness. It has no separate element of person. So there is no person here that can conjure up a substitute of love. Be glad that it can't be conjured up. And be glad that it can't be conjured up in you either, when you are affirming that love is one. It is not personal. It does not belong to one and not to another. It does not have preferences, and it does not depend in any way on anyone's behavior. It does not come and go. It does not dole itself out through good deeds, good behaviors as opposed to bad. It is freely given without any reservation. It is God's love. There is no love but God's, and all love is His. There is no other principle that rules where love is not. There is no other principle that rules where love is not. There is no law that can substitute for the truth of love. There is no law that we've made up that says anything that has anything to do with love. Imagine what your day would be like without judging and doling out either likes or dislikes. How many times a day, I could have probably said 20 or 30 or 40, 50. How many times a day is there an opportunity to offer God's love? 100. But each time is the opportunity of healing the truth of you. Every single time. Every time you offer God's love and have no judgment, your heart opens and that love flows through. So this is the other part of love versus narcissism. God's love comes through into your spirit. God's words will come through you. You will hear through God's voice. It's actually a very important element to recognize that the love that is God is not a love that you are manufacturing through your likes and dislikes, which is what the ego does. The ego judges and bestows what it considers to be love, which is approval. It isn't love. It's an approval for good behavior, good personality, good ideas. But it isn't love. Open your heart and offer God's love. Let it come through, let it bathe you as you offer it. Because it is bathing you as you offer that love. And that love just says, you don't have to earn this. I'm not here to approve of your behaviors. I am not here to approve of your personality. I'm not here to approve of your life. I have no clue. God sees it all. And you are God's light. You are God's child. Everyone is God's child. And how could, if it were possible, how could narcissism think to be able to say, I'll give you love if you behave well? That is the narcissistic way. But God's love has no limitation. You give it freely. And in return, you find yourself serene, without worry, and joy-filled. Because you're not holding any judgment. Where is the joy? The joy is who and what you are. But if you are judging, if you are assessing, if you are assessing yourself or anyone else, you're not in contact with that joy because you just covered it up with a judgment. And they can't coincide, they can't live together. So love is calling you to a wholeness. Love is a law. It's a law. It's the only law. It has no opposite. Its wholeness is the power holding everything as one. It's the power of the universe that holds the universe in place, that holds all divine beings in oneness. It is what flows through all creation, easily and effortlessly. And of course, it flows through you if that is your willingness. Its wholeness is the power holding everything at one, the link between the Father and the child, which holds them both forever as the same. Thank God there's only one. There's one love, one heart, and there is nothing to judge, nothing to reward, nothing to hold back, and only God, to hear the voice of God that speaks so quietly and so fully in every moment. The beloved that saying yes to God learns to be simple. Open-mindedness comes from lack of judgment. If you have no opinion in your mind, you are open-minded. Open-minded is a free space that has no opinion and that accepts that there are mysteries of the universe that we can't understand. And we don't need to understand it. It's in God's hands. Open-mindedness does not have a rule book that from the past that says these are my rules that if somebody doesn't follow them, this is not okay. Open-mindedness has no rules. Everything is in God's hands. Everything is God's creation. And we turn to God for the answers, for the direction, for the correction, for love. Mother, I beg for your love. I beg you for the compassion. I beg you for the light. When I don't feel the light or see the light, I know where my source is, and you are my source. God, Mother, Father, all one. All love. And all offering, constant offering, flowing into your heart in the acceptance of that love. You are called to abandon the form and accept being restored in joy and newness. To abandon the form. Abandoning the form is not that difficult. It's just seeing it for what it is. It's no longer worshiping the material. It's no longer believing that the material is what is needed for your safety or for your well-being. That God is the source of your wellness, of your peace, of your wholeness. It is God. And there is nothing that will ever change that. The rejection of narcissism, the rejection of the little self, and the rejection of the laws of the world really leaves you with what is everything. Because when you reject illusion, you discover that it never was. It never was the truth of you. It never had any power, and it never had any worth. Come home to God. Come home to the truth of your divine self, one with God. Father, child, mother, child. I'm a son of compassion. I'm a daughter of compassion. That is not beyond. That is what you are now. It's just living it in its fulfillment. I am alone in nothing. God is always the source of everything. The source of my nourishment, the source of my life, the source of my faith, the source of my happiness, the source of creation, as it is for everyone.